If you could get $100 for slapping yourself, how many slaps would you give yourself? Annie accidentally burned the top of her head when curling her hair. The teapot next to her immediately made a noise. Annie opened the lid and looked. Oh my god, there was $200 inside. Annie didn't hesitate to pick up the curling iron and put it directly on her forehead. Now the teapot is moving again. Annie took a handful of $700 and there it was. Annie couldn't stop tasting the sweetness. By the time Jack got home from work, the house was a mess. Annie was also bruised and battered. Before she could explain, Annie slapped Jack in the face. Before Jack could react, the teapot poured a large amount of money. Jack thought that Annie had put it there in advance, but after receiving a few more slaps, he was completely convinced this teapot can really spit out money. After some discussion, the couple set a small goal: make $1 million and call it quits. Once the gas stove was turned on, the couple roasted the pig's trotters. Then Annie went to the beauty store and had a full body wax. Jack was even more ruthless, pulled teeth without anesthetic. The couple's operation. Even the teapot trembled with fear. The couple got 200,000 yuan in one day to pay off all their debts. 2 or 3 days of work down the couple's luxury cars and wine are a lot. Even the residence has moved into a luxury villa. Now they are having a party. Dr. Lee from China came to the door. Lee said straight away that he was a researcher of antique teapots. The teapot in Jack's hand will bring them to the end of the world. When Annie heard this, she was not happy. She drove Lee away directly. But after some calm, the couple decided to find Lee again to ask a clear question. According to Lee, this teapot has experienced a lot of owners. It can inspire all the evil in human hearts. None of the people who got it will have a good end. Lee's advice was to hand over the teapot to himself. He will hide the teapot where no one can find it. The couple can go back to their old lives, as if nothing had ever happened. Annie still decisively refused Lee's proposal, said she and Jack are good people, there is no evil at all. Everything can be controlled. But something more terrible happened. This is the teapot that can spit money infinitely. The harder you hit, the more money you give. That night the two brothers Beard broke into the house, robbed the couple of all the money. What puzzled the couple was that the brothers only wanted money, but not the teapot that can spit out money. The couple decided to start all over again with nothing. But this time, the teapot is not as happy as before. It only spits out small amounts of money for minor injuries. Jack was ready to do something to himself, but he was still a little bit unable to do it. He had no choice but to go to the bar. After 2 drinks, he found the most vicious man in the bar. The result is needless to say. To a certain son, after a severe beating, teapot spit out a lot of money as expected. But this is not a long-term solution after all. This way the money is earned, but may lose their lives. Jack wanted to give up the teapot, to find a job and start a new leaf. But one day things took a turn for the worse. Annie found out that when she saw people being hurt, the teapot will spit out the money as well. The couple is overjoyed. The couple had a full schedule. In the morning they went to see mixed martial arts. In the afternoon, they went to see someone get a tattoo. Annie also had to stay at the hospital at night. The second person was back at the top of his game again after a day or two. The house was full of money in the safe. Jack wanted to quit. The money had already exceeded the small goal he had set for himself, but Annie was still too little. Seeing a homeless man crossing the street, Annie kicked the gas and went for it. If Jack hadn't grabbed the steering wheel, the homeless man would have been taken care of by Annie. The two of them had a big fight in the car about it. Jack felt that Annie had become obsessed, but Annie really thinks Jack is a man who cannot do anything. And just when the two couples are not happy to break up, they did find that the teapot was spitting money. Annie immediately thought of a way to get rich again. To Jack said some sad words, and then opened the teapot to see. Sure enough, there is already a lot of money. With this discovery, the two stood in the street and hurt each other. Back home, the two of them are not idle, playing a game of confession, all kinds of little secrets that only they know from each other's mouths. Even Annie and the former landlord had a one-night stand thing. Annie also set out. Looking at the money piled up on the table, Jack is not happy at all. Two people look at this as not a solution. If this continues, there will only be one result. That is, the family is broken up. Every time you say a sad word, the teapot will spit out money. The bigger the scale, the more money will be spit out. The couple saw that hurting themselves is not a solution, so they hit on the idea of a good friend. 2 people arrived at the doorstep of their friend's house, handed a paper box and said, "Your dog is not lost, but by your careless wife smothered to death." The two turned around and changed to another friend, handed out photos of their friend's husband cheating on them. The couple's purpose is to make money. Finally, Annie also took Jack to her sister's home. Annie already knew that her sister's first child was not her brother-in-law's. I wanted to make a fortune with this information, but at the critical moment she could not say it. When she returned home, Annie was very upset. Then Annie came up with another idea. Why don't we just do a big job and call it quits? There are a lot of bad guys out there. Let's just take care of one. Jack agreed. They were hard at work digging a hole. Jack suddenly woke up. He and his wife were about to kill someone. It seems that Lee was right. This teapot will really inspire the evil in the heart. Jack threw away the shovel and asked Annie to choose between himself and the teapot. But Annie chose the teapot without even thinking about it. There was no other way out. Jack took the teapot to the window at night while Annie was washing up. Jack sat on the window with the teapot and talked to Annie again about giving up the teapot. Although Annie said yes, but her eyes were still glued to the teapot. Desperate, Jack picked up the teapot and dropped it. He fell to the lawn outside the house. It was then that Annie came to her senses. It seemed that Jack was more important than the teapot. Luckily, the window was not high enough. Jack was fine. The couple had hoped to give the teapot to Lee the next day, but that night the teapot was stolen by the previous landlord. In the morning, Jack and Annie arrived at the landlord's home. At this time, the room was in a mess. There was blood and money everywhere, and the landlord had gone crazy. They had obviously learned the secret of the teapot. Grab a gun and prepare to kill the couple and make the teapot spit out more money. And at the very moment of pulling the trigger, the bearded brothers burst into the room. Jack and Annie rushed to the side to hide. In no time, the room was filled with money, and the two brothers and the landlord had fallen to the ground. At the end of the story, Movies and Annie took the money and the teapot out of the room, handed the teapot to Lee, and Lee threw the teapot into the deep sea. This is the end of the story. If you have such a teapot, can you make $1 million and then stop?